Yeah, bigger is better. I'm intrigued. I'm slightly horrified with images of mice running across my floor. Oh, now I'm excited. It's been 8 years. I can't wait to see what imaginative, inventive name that Nintendo has given its heir to the throne. Bring it! Now I'm less excited. Hey gamers, good to see ya. The Switch 2 is here, to the surprise of no one, because leak culture is apparently in the business of taking away any and all surprise and joy from the biggest gaming announcements. Does anyone remember that slow build-up of anticipation that came with subscriptions to Nintendo Power, when games and systems were delivered with slow anticipation towards us? Not a soul? Okie dokie. Leaks aside, let's embrace the sheer epicness of this, because Nintendo has officially released the shortest, least detailed hardware reveal trailer in modern history. That was probably supposed to be a bit more exciting. With the Switch 2 finally a real thing, there are finally some answers, and a smorgasbord of new questions. What are the key design changes? How much will it cost? How much horsepower is in this largely identical looking handheld console hybrid? And should Nintendo's epic failure to give the thing a creative name be a worrisome harbinger of things to come? I'm Shep from Gaming Introspection, and I invite you to join me as we sift through the trailer and other internet tidbits as we uncover more information about the Switch 2. Let's get a handle on this portable beast. It's got an 8-inch screen, which is 1 inch more real estate than the original. The frame's length and width are slightly larger too, which may impact its portability factor, as even the original Switch was tough to fit into many pockets. That screen, I'm fairly confident, will be an LCD type too. For one thing, making it OLED would mean that Switch variant would suffer in sales for losing its only unique feature. It would also prevent Nintendo from releasing the inevitable OLED version of the Switch 2 3 years later for a few pretty pennies more than the original SKU, as well as the Switch 2 Lite that would return some of its portability factor. It's marketing 101. Which is fine. I'm guessing some of you play Switch exclusively as your main home console anyway, outputting it to monitors or 65-inch OLED TVs in your living room or man caves. I am grateful that the buttons have been pumped up in size. The originals felt like a preschool toy in how tiny they were, especially for those of us with bigger hands. Bigger is definitely better, which is even more pronounced on the SL and SR buttons when you're using the detached joycons as a separate controller. If you've ever wanted to get carpal tunnel or some other early form of arthritis, just play a marathon session of 8-player Smash using the original Switch joycons in this setup. Oh, it is not fun. I'm hoping the triggers have a deeper range too. The originals are just pretty much like buttons. And the D-pad, it's not great in my opinion. I miss the designs that actually join together to make the cross. But I'm old. Gamers, this is a bit random, but what do you think of mice? Agreed. They should be eradicated from the face of the earth. But I'm talking about these things. With the wrist strap attachments on the Joy-Cons, that's exactly what comes to mind. So I guess we can't say they didn't demonstrate this function as well as they could without showing off a bunch of games. But speaking of those, you could do some really cool things with this. Think of strategy or simulation games like Civilization, or a new SimCity game where you could fluidly move and click to easily check individual buildings or quickly access menu icons. Dare we hope for an updated version of Mario Paint? The mouse function screams Mario Paint to me. Any gamers my age would remember that gem from the Super Nintendo days with its oodles of art and music composition tools. Obviously, this mouse functionality will be a niche use, but if there's even a few games that could benefit from it, it's great to have. We see an extra USB-C port on the top, which, while being convenient for charging, especially with how the originals needed to be planted down into the Switch hub to charge, we could have a litany of extra accessories, or even things like external displays possible with this. Don't overlook this seemingly bland extra port. The magnetic attaching mechanism reminds me of the MagSafe design on a MacBook Pro charger. It certainly seems user-friendly and less prone to breakage than the rail sliders of the old model. And nope, I have no idea what that extra button does, and no one else seems to either. Right now, its sole purpose is to anger those artistic people who enjoyed the sleek, symmetrical button layout of the OG Switch controller.
That bugs a few of you out there, now that you've seen it, doesn't it? Yeah, it does.
I'd love to hear what you think though. It's not replacing the capture button, which still resides in its original spot. Maybe it's a shortcut to the next incarnation of the Nintendo Miiverse hub? Or an ease of access voice chat button?
I don't know why that would be the case though. I mean, don't we all enjoy getting out our cell phone, downloading a Nintendo voice chat app, and doing things Nintendo's way? Right? That wasn't inconvenient for anyone involved. Beautiful setup.
Last, and honestly, kind of least, we got this tacky, flimsy-looking kickstand, which nevertheless offers more degrees of viewing angles, and at least covers the whole width area of the thing. Instead of this plastic stub that looks like a piece of your Switch is breaking off the back. Oh god! Gee, it did break off! Look at that! And then, why can I attach it back just fine, only for it to break off again? Oh, this setup is a disaster. Well, this yoga stretching kickstand is hopefully at least better than that embarrassment.
Is the Switch 2's power an embarrassment? Well... there are estimates all over the place for this.
Tom's Guide has numbers equating the Switch 2 to not even base PS4 levels, but I'd wager it's gotta be at least that. I mean, Final Fantasy Remake is rumored to be a big third-party title, and that game pushed the base PS4 to its limits. If you're into teraflops, many websites list a huge disparity between handheld and docked mode, but even the docked Switch 2 power comes in at lower than the lower end of the Xbox Series, a whole teraflop behind even the Xbox Series S. As Game Radar states though, tons of power isn't and hasn't ever been a huge priority for Nintendo anyway.
That Switch over there isn't much more powerful than this, and it became the second best-selling system in video game history. So if the Switch 2 is about as powerful as this, it should logically become the second best-selling console in video game history. Yeah, I should probably clean this.
Mario Kart 8 is a game built for the ancient Wii U, and it still sells millions every year up to this day. Nintendo's always been about the games. Granted, this lack of power is still going to exclude players from many of the big AAA third-party games. I guarantee we won't be seeing Grand Theft Auto 6 on this, for example, but Nintendo's always just marched to the beat of its flagship franchises, knowing they can print money each time a new entry of Zelda, Mario, or Smash is released.
There's conflicting reports about how much dough we're gonna have to fork over to enjoy this souped-up Switch console.
CBR.com reports a Micromania employee stating the converted $406 price. Gaming Bible is more pessimistic with a $500 tag, while Game Rant's fluid $400 to $500 range seems to match what we'd expect. IGN reports many experts saying $400 being the most Nintendo could justifiably ask for, which seems fair.
The original Switch was $300, and it's 8 years of inflation later. But at the same time, there isn't the freshness, that gimmick, the new technologies that would justify raising the price any more than that extra $100.
A 400 tag is still $50 more expensive than the shiny OLED Switch. Consider that the PS5 and Xbox Series X released at $500, but even though they're going on 5 years old, they still have considerably more horsepower than the Switch 2. It's not even a comparison. Even with inflation, pricing the Switch at the same point as those seems a bit much.
A bit much, even for Nintendo, the company that giggles with glee every time they release Donkey Kong Country Returns for the third time in 14 years at $60 each time. As a Canadian, I am very hopeful that the Switch 2 sticks that $400 USD price point landing, which would peg the Canadian release at about $600. Unlike the $700 PS5 Pro, which equates to 1,000 Canadian dollars. Luckily, amidst all the crazy what-ifs and questions, Nintendo did make one thing perfectly clear.
The Switch 2 is fully compatible with Switch 1 games. Well, most of them, and that includes the physical cartridges. Given that this seems to be the only SD slot on the console, expect Switch 2 games to arrive in a very similarly sized game case with an identical SD card form factor. This means we still may have to hunt around for cartridges if we drop them, lest babies or kittens accidentally ingest the damn things. But full backwards compatibility was very smart. New fans who didn't own the original console, but enjoyed Switch gaming with family and friends, will have an excuse to lay out the bills to get that and the new offerings Nintendo will have in store, which apparently is starting with the 11 years in the making sequel to Mario Kart 8. It's a brand new Mario Kart game that will double the competitive field to 24. Which I think is great, especially given that online finally took off with Mario Kart 8. This will give online play an even bigger foothold with this many active carts battling each other. I'm encouraged to see more of these tracks because the width and scope of this desert course is so expansive. It's like a racing version of N64's Hyrule Field in terms of how open the design feels, which in itself would make Mario Kart 9 stand apart from 8 in the overall tone of the game and the variety of the track layouts.
Nintendo just loves being coy with release dates, don't they?
The only date of significance we have right now is the April 2nd Nintendo Direct, which will hopefully confirm the actual release day. But there's signups for hands-on events all the way through the spring and even into June. Given that the point of these is to get feedback and generate excitement, I'd peg July as the absolute earliest Nintendo would release the Switch 2. But summer isn't traditionally a console release month. Everyone's busy during the summer, often on vacation, outside, or on the road doing events.
Nintendo has strayed from the holiday release window before. As you remember, the original Switch was released in March of 2017, but even that makes more sense than during the summer. People are at home more often, especially on days off.
Also, given it's a portable, does it really matter when the Switch 2 comes out? Summer might be the perfect time for those road trips with a new Nintendo console. If you were to ask me, I'd guess more of a Nintendo 64 route when it released in North America in late September of 1996. But hey, in Japan, they did release the N64 at the end of June, so anything is possible. Anything, it seems, except for coming up with a creative name.
It was so easy to do this, Nintendo! The trailer literally shows a souped-up version of the Nintendo Switch. Super Nintendo Switch. It rings joyously through the ears of millennial-age gamers like me. It recognizes the souped-up jolt of power, just as the Super Nintendo did when it replaced the NES. And young kids who don't know anything about that, they still know the literal definition of super. Look at this, it's surpassing all or most others of its kind. It works on so many levels!
Switch 2 is so boring. It's like Nintendo just became one of the Sony herd and added a number onto their next big undertaking.
They've never done that before. Maybe it is creative then.
Even with the Game Boy, they at least added an adjective like Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance. Not just a number, but at least the marketing is clear. It's the second version of the Nintendo Switch, not Switch U, a naming strategy that I still think is part of what made the Wii U fail so badly.
Overall, this reveal trailer wasn't that impressive, but it didn't need to be, really. We have concrete proof of concept and design, and a date to look forward to so we can figure out more, including that mysterious extra button. As usual, I rambled on for far too long. I want to hear from you, gamers. Please share with me. First of all, are you getting the Switch 2? And what did you think of the trailer? Were there any curious details you found or questions you'd like to talk about? Will you ever use controllers as mice? And most importantly, what are your most anticipated games for the Switch 2? I know I've got one that I'm craving, and if Smash Brothers is at the top of your list, I have a whole video dissecting how Nintendo might design the inevitable Switch 2 version of Smash Brothers. Thanks so much, and hey, please like and subscribe for more in-depth gaming analysis right here at Gaming Introspection. Always good to see you, gamers. Take care.